What is cracking? What's popping? What's shaking, everybody? Merry Christmas Eve, I guess we can say here. Uh,
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. I am
oh
festive.
man, what's going on, Grace? Merry Christmas Eve slash Merry birthday to you. Merry early birthday to you.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. My birthday's tomorrow, so thank you very much. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I'm gonna turn this up real quick so I can make sure to
Yeah.
hear
Oh, well,
you.
I gotta turn myself up
Yeah, so
because,
well, happy to be
like, I
back.
know last week my mic was a little low, so right now I'm gonna make sure everybody can hear me this go round. So you're good, I'm good, and now here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and switch the screen real quick, and I'm actually gonna throw it back to the original screen. Remember when we were like in outer space on the very first episode?
Oh my God, yes. I
the
love that
the the
screen.
reason why we're going here because the title of this episode is the CCU and the Multiverse of Madness Part 2. Okay, we've had Part 1 a few streams back, and now today I think it is fit to call it Part 2 just because we have a lot to cover, and this is going to be a quick show. I think we're only going to be on for an hour, but it's going to be spread throughout the multiverse. So I think Grace and I, we agreed that we are going to start with Hawkeye. So let's talk
Yes.
about, because we didn't talk about episode 5. So in episode 5, there was a huge reveal, okay? And in that reveal, it's like I am going to talk about that episode briefly, but it coincides with the reveal that we saw in No Way Home, which is the Netflix kind of shifting over to the Disney Plus Marvel. So,
Yeah.
Grace, kind of go into what they revealed in episode 5.
Awesome. So in episode five, and I think the timing was so well done because it was the same week of the release of No Way Home. So I think the timing
Mm-hmm.
was just so perfect. So episode five, we finally see Kingpin, and we have talked about him, in the previous episode that we did on Hawkeye, because of course he was suspected to be kind of like the big bad in the show along with other people. But we finally see him, and we see. Do you have his name, the
Vincent
actor's name,
D'Onofrio
like off the
or
top of your head?
Vincent
I knew it. I
D'Onofrio.
knew
It's
it.
either D'Onofrio or D'Onofrio. I just have a buddy named D'Onofrio. That's that's how I'm gonna pronounce it.
I'll go with it. I'll go with it. But we have him reprising his role from Daredevil. So this is huge. This is ginormous because since obviously Hawkeye episode 5 came out before Spider-Man by like a day, this is the first time that we're seeing the MCU really address the events of the Netflix series that we've seen. Obviously, the Netflix shows have made a lot of connections to the films themselves, but this is the first time that we're seeing it on like the other end, where it's like the MCU is making those direct lines, and that's big. This is what people have been waiting for years. And it's obviously not in the same way that we had expected it to happen from years ago, but the epicness is still there. It is beautifully done. And then of course, and we talked about this last time, for those of you who did not see Spider-Man No Way Home, I'll give you guys a second just to like like do whatever, turn on the audio. But in Spider-Man No Way Home, we of course got
Daredevil. Mm-hmm.
Daredevil coming through, Matt Murdock. And so it's been a very crazy month for us. Like we don't have a chance to like catch our breath right
So
now.
say with these two reveals, like another reason why I kind of like the title of this episode is because now I'm curious just to know if these are the Matt Murdocks and the Kingpins that we know of the Netflix universe, or is this, let's call them, variants of these characters? Are they getting a brand new start in this universe? So say with
Yeah.
episode 5. Okay, let's backtrack just a little bit, and just so you know, I got the timer going, Grace. So we're good on time. So episode 5, it starts with Yelena. She goes to bring back
Oh,
a widow out of the mind control. And this is where I thought we were actually done with blips, but they somehow brought the elements of the blip back, because I don't know if you mentioned it before, Grace. We were talking about Endgame and Natasha's story in Black Widow. I don't know if we brought up the fact that her sister was blipped or not. Did you? Do you remember?
Damn right I did. Damn right I did. Yes. This is huge. So in our Black Widow episode, if you guys have not checked it out, be sure to check it out. We were talking about how, and it hadn't been confirmed up until now that we thought, Yelena most likely was blipped away. Otherwise, what would explain her absence in Endgame? And I feel like that fact, and I'm just so happy that it's been confirmed, is so big because it also drives Natasha's decision to sacrifice herself to not just bring the world back, to bring back her sister, and so that was huge. I'm so happy that we saw this perspective of the blip through Yelena's eyes. I think it gave us a similar perspective to when we saw Monica Rambeau's character in WandaVision experience the blip, because they were both very different, but they kind of are slowly piecing together the different experiences, right? Because initially we obviously saw it from the perspective of, us just seeing our beloved, heroes just disappearing. And then when they came back, we didn't really see much in terms of how that shifted. And we've seen all aspects of it, like the chaos of it, just like the heartstrings of it. And this one we really just see like how jarring and confusing that experience is. How jarring and confusing that experience is for those who have been flipped. So yes, that was such a cool scene.
So in that episode, we kind of get a feel for, like, say she meets up with Kate Bishop in the apartment, and they kind of have like a back and forth. Like, Kate is wondering, like, what are you doing here, while Yelena's just over here making mac and cheese, having like small talk, talking about how she wants to visit all these sites in New York, because you forget that she's been under mind control her entire life, so it's like she's looking to not only do these missions but also see the world as an individual. So she's out here asking Kate Bishop what she wants to what she should do or whatnot, but the end goal is still the same. She is all about killing Clint Barton. And I think as the show progresses, because it's not as fresh. I haven't seen it since last week, but I believe as the show progresses, it gets to the point to where Eleanor Bishop, she sets up the swordsman, right?
Yes. Yes. Actually, and before we dive into that, I just kind of want to rewind a little bit back to that scene with Yelena and Kate, just because it is such a good scene. Honestly, this episode 5 was probably my favorite of the Hawkeye series. Last time that we saw Yelena, we saw, like, the way you, I think, said it perfectly, like a different kind of Yelena, right? This is a Yelena on a mission. She is here to, in her eyes, really like redeem her sister, and in this episode, especially this particular scene, we see the Yelena that we all like fell in love with, just like the way, I don't know, the way everything was delivered. I think Florence Pugh is just an amazing actress, and I think she just brings so much to the role. But we also get a lot of little tidbits that kind of connect the whole multiverse, and especially for this episode, Multiverse of Madness, I think it fits. So we, of course, get a reference to, one of those landmarks that she's like so excited to see. One of them being I think she says like enhanced Statue of Liberty. And we know that this is a direct little Easter egg to what we saw in No Way Home. And so we're seeing those connections and kind of what we talked about last time, and seeing where this falls on the timeline. In terms of how long ago was this from Endgame? How long is this compared to like No Way Home? So we know this is post the events of No Way Home, because it sounds like the statue is now finished, right? And of course, we also just get little connections to connect this also to like what we saw in Black Widow. There's a mention of like, oh, my daddy says it's good for you to like eat and things like that. And I just love that because, she's been through so much, much like any of the characters we've seen. So it's nice to just see like rekindle with this version of Yelena. But now I'm ready. Let's go. Let's go back to Eleanor and bring me
so Kate confides in her mom, and thinks that, well, implies that the swordsman is behind the tracksuit mafia. But in actuality, it comes clear that uh, he isn't. Like Eleanor, like we found out, I think episode 6, that Eleanor is behind it all. You know,
Yes.
she is behind the setup and behind everything. And say when it comes down to this episode, it pretty much like debunks everything that we've kind of come to conclude on who the swordsman is in the series. Like he actually turns out to be a good guy as opposed to a bad guy. And um, say
Yeah.
it's a matter of, like, I guess a text conversation that Yelena starts to have with Kate Bishop, and by the end of the episode, we get an image of the big reveal of Kingpin, like as far as who hired the Black Widow assassin to take out Clint Barton. So from there, episode 5 ends, and we already now suspect that it's Eleanor and Kingpin that are kind of in cahoots. Those are the main villains
Yes.
of this series. Is that everything of
Yes,
episode 5?
exactly. Yeah. Let's see. I think another thing that we see in episode 5 that I like
Mm-hmm.
freaked out on is there's a conversation between Clint and Laura, right? Laura Barton, and I think it's after he visits like the little memorial plaque for the Battle of New York, and he has like a this heartfelt conversation with like the ghost of of
Mm-hmm.
Nat, right? But in the conversation, there's a lot of things that allude even more so to what we were talking about last time, which is like Laura is like an agent,
Mm-hmm.
something, shield or other, and we'll get more into it in
Mm-hmm.
episode 6. But when I saw that little, like, I don't know what it was, I think, oh, she said something like because he's like, I can't come home until I see this through, and she's like, I understand more than
Mm-hmm.
anyone. And that conversation, I was like, ugh. Like, I was like, chill,
Yeah.
it's
Super spy.
happening, they're
Yep.
gonna confirm it. Oh, dude, and we'll talk more of it in episode 6. But I think those were like the huge points. It's seeing Yelena obviously getting the confirmation at the end with Kingpin, and of course, something I love is that Clint, after that battle on the roof with Yelena and Maya, he goes and stays with what's his name? Is it?
It's,
He's one
it's
of the.
not Griff. It's
I was gonna say. I was gonna say
it is.
Grills.
It
Is that
is.
it? No,
Yes.
it's not.
Yes.
Is it Grills? Okay. Grills, which is one of like the LARPers, and I just love how present they are in this show. Because when we talked about them, like the first run of last episode, we were like, oh, they're probably not going to make
Right.
another appearance, and they've been making
Yeah.
quite a bit,
They've
Yeah.
become the quote unquote, like, I would say, I wouldn't say safe house necessarily, but like, of course, anybody, whether it's Kingpin or just any person that is after Ronan, would never think that these LARPers are involved in anything, you know. So they
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
like, I like that they added more to this series, you know. And it's like we talked about it in episode 4, how they kind of agreed to make the new costumes of Hawkeye and Kate Bishop, and later on, episode 6, these costumes are revealed to see, and it comes to show that it's almost similar, because I have the image that you sent of the Hawkeye cover, that they're similar to the comic
Oh
book. Kind of
yeah,
go into that real
absolutely.
quick.
Yeah. So we get a little snippet earlier in the series of like Kate drawing, potential new costumes for Clint, because she keeps bringing up this idea of like his branding is
Mm-hmm.
just so off. And the drawing that she makes is something that is very similar to what we see him in the original comics, which is very flashy, like very like out there, with something we definitely wouldn't see him in now. But now that we've seen, in episode 6, his new costume along with Kate's, they resemble very almost like identical to what we see in the Hawkeye comic book run that this show is very
Mm-hmm.
heavily based on. So I thought that was really cool, and we've seen so many tie-ins to show that this is the comic series that They've drawn a lot of inspiration from just the introduction, so many things, and it's nice to see that continue in this way. So that was a really cool
Definitely.
reveal, especially because he has it underneath, which is such a typical like superhero thing, like having it underneath your
Right,
clothes. I
right.
just love that. I
Well,
love the
we'll talk
whole,
about that in a second because I think we want to
yeah,
move. I'm going to move straight into episode 6. Okay. Because
we'll do
even
it.
before this series came out, I have been looking more so for this tuxedo shootout that was in the trailer, and it's like episodes 1 through 5. I'm like, okay, they're gonna save it for the very end, and that's what they do. There's some type of super fancy gala formal event, where everybody's dressing
Yes.
up and everybody's there. And before we even get to that, we get a little bit more of Kingpin here. Okay, we get
Hmm.
a scene with him, Kazi, and what's the other, and Maya, right?
Maya.
What's her other name? What are we calling her? Echo, right? So
Echo.
say
Yes.
when it comes down to this scene, she's kind of almost kind of playing coy, like, oh, I think I'm just gonna take a break from the tracksuits, when she's starting to piece the puzzles together. She has a face to face with Kingpin, and it's like he feels it. Like it's like, all right, she's separating herself from us. Something's up, and if worse come to worse, Kazi, you may have to do what you have to do and take her out. I think that's the route that he went.
Yeah.
And this is the Kingpin that we know, because say episode 5, we just got an image, but if you all are familiar with Kingpin from the Daredevil series, this is same old, the same type of feel. I'm wondering if it's gonna go as dark as it did before, as far as his character, or if they're uh, gonna change it. There was a change that I did notice that I actually did like. Say I'm gonna kind of skip towards the end here. We're gonna bring it back, but say at the end of this episode we see a showdown between Kate Bishop and Kingpin. Okay. And one thing that we didn't really see too much, I don't even remember seeing in the Daredevil series, is how strong Kingpin is. Okay. He's
Hmm.
taking arrows to the chest like it's nothing. And this reminds me of the Kingpin that I would see in any animated series. He wasn't just like a big guy. Like he was yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not
He
just a
was a
monster. Yeah.
strong guy that he was fighting like any like hero that came in his way. It wasn't just like him and his minions fighting for him. He was getting down, and he was the strongest out of everyone. So say in this episode, in this fight with Kate Bishop, I was like, okay, now we're actually getting a little bit more of a comic book feel for this Kingpin character.
Yes. And then just kind of speaking on like his powers, because I think I had like the same reaction. I'm not like severe, like hugely familiar with his character in the comics, but after episode 6, I had to dive in because I was like, how the hell is this man doing? Like, I was like, I feel like he was just, a normal human. And he technically is. His abilities are still within the scope of human abilities. Like, he walks the line where he's not necessarily considered like
Mm-hmm.
enhanced technically because his abilities, his strength, it is basically built up from like exercise and like Olympic lifting, all of that, which to me I love so much. Like, you guys know, like I feel like Chill's mentioned it before, like we're
Mm-hmm.
both personal trainers. So I that like hyped me up. I'm like, this is the abilities we could all accomplish if we just apply the right parameters. But I believe he weighs like 450 pounds. Only 5 pounds of that or something like that are of fat. Everything else is muscle. And this is why he's so durable against like, blows and all of that. And so I thought that was so cool when I was
Mm-hmm.
diving into his character. And that just like blew my
Yeah.
mind. I thought that was awesome.
So let's take it back to the beginning. They like he has this meeting, and it concludes with him and Kazi basically making a plan to pretty much not only take her out but find a way to take out Clint, because this confirmed that Kingpin, he has no idea who Ronan is either, because he mentions, he's like, and we have an Avenger looking into our business, you know? So it wasn't like we have
Yes.
Ronan doing this. It's like we have this other guy, Hawkeye, just coming in and ruining our business for us, you know? So I initially thought, like, say when Clint confirmed uh, that Kingpin hired him to take out Echo's father, I'm thinking they had maybe like a face to face and he knows who Ronan is. But in actuality, it's the exact opposite. Nobody but
Yeah.
Clint's wife and Natasha Romanoff knows who Ronan is, you know? So I thought that to be interesting in that kind of back and forth between him and Kazi.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I feel like there's some storyline that we may not be getting with them just because we see little things with like Kazi's relationship to Maya and obviously like Maya's relationship to Kazi and Kingpin. And I know they're kind of setting up because there was a comic book storyline where very similar to this, like, Maya's dad is like killed and Kingpin basically adopts her and she refers to him as
Mm-hmm.
uncle in like the run of the series. But I feel like there's like more to that story because I feel like there isn't as much weight and like that final battle between Kazi and Maya as there should be. Like you can sense it. We've seen pictures of them as kids, but I feel like I wish I got like a little more just because of my curiosity. Like I'm playing Chill's role where I'm like, I
Mm,
want a backstory. I want to see more. But maybe we'll see more down the line. But no, I definitely like the dynamic in terms of like the whole Ronin Hawkeye and then like their relationship to like Kingpin and how Kingpin is obviously aware of Ronin because he hired him for, killing off Maya's dad, but no awareness of like that
yeah.
connection with Hawkeye. And since we're still talking, Kingpin and all of that, Eleanor, right? I think this episode starts off with Eleanor having that conversation with Kingpin, and she's like basically like, "I am out. My daughter's getting way too close to this. This is where I draw the line." And this is where I'm just like, "Yes, Eleanor, yes," because I'm a mom, so that's just like yes, like just like the like motherly instincts of like I need to keep my child safe. Um, but also it's like she kind of allowed Kate to be that close and with just previous conversations that she's
Mm-hmm.
had with Kate. I think it was like in episode 1 or even episode 2 potentially where she's having conversation with Kate and it kind of goes along the lines of like I promise you, like if you just keep going on this path, like you're going to be really happy in a few years where you end up. And so there's a lot of little things to allude to potentially her having had like maybe the idea of Kate almost taking on her place when it comes to Kingpin and where she falls in like the mob regime because obviously her empire is still
Well,
pumping, you know? Um,
I would put it more so as not necessarily the mob, but more so to put her in position of power in the security firm. Because I wouldn't say the security firm is necessarily under Kingpin. I would say that is an entity on its own that Eleanor Bishop owns, and she may have just like owed Kingpin because she mentioned that she was in a debt. So she may had
oh,
she
that's
paid off the
right.
debt
Yeah.
for Derek Bishop, but
Derek. Yeah.
I don't think it was under Kingpin, and I feel like just from that conversation and what we've seen Eleanor as a whole throughout this whole series, she's not necessarily a mobster. She's just somebody who works with a mobster, but she has a legitimate business that she wanted her daughter to eventually take over.
I'll
Yeah.
call on that. Yeah. I like that sounds better. I like how that sounds just in terms of like the relationship with her and,
Yeah.
and Kate for sure. Yeah. And then going into because I think after that, it's they go through this montage of obviously prepping for that big gala, which is where, the main events kind of
Mm-hmm.
unfold for this episode. And we get this really cool like segment where they're like preparing everything, like all of the
Mm-hmm.
trick arrows. We see like more of the Pym tech. And I think it was in episode 5 where we get like I think Kate mentions, the idea of like
Mm-hmm.
a boomerang arrow. And I got so excited because I mentioned it in our last episode. And I was like, oh, like maybe we're going to see it once she mentioned it, but we didn't end up seeing it in episode 6. I was very excited about it, but we did see a whole bunch of other stuff. That scene was
I would
really, really
say
cool.
in that little montage of them building those, there was a moment to where like he's just like, "Don't touch that," and I was like, oh, that's the boomerang arrow. Like in my mind, that's where I went.
Okay, yeah, I was
Yeah.
waiting. Yes, I was
Yeah.
waiting. Oh, but this episode was just so dope. I mean, like I love how obviously Kate's been kind of front putting herself like, I am your partner, we are friends, we are this, and he keeps saying like we are not
Mm-hmm.
associated. And this is finally like the shift of like, Kate, you're my partner, like we're in this together, and that's just so
Mm-hmm.
good.
Well, he took
Give it to
it.
us.
Yeah, like
Yes,
he
Chef
he he took it
Heartstrings.
there, and like initially, because I think she was broken for a second, but again, this is another Clint Barton moment to pull someone up and make them the best that they can be. And if it's just as simple as saying, "You're my partner," right there, she's like, "All right,"
All
you
right,
know.
yes. Yes, yes. Because I mean, for her, this is a huge reveal. Like, yes, she like kept pointing things at Jack, but then for things to be, so connected to her mom, that is huge. And she's had, obviously in this episode, she had to make the huge decision of not just, going back and like fighting the bad guys, but she had to send
Yeah,
her mom to jail. Like,
yeah,
that's huge. So she's definitely on that route of the hero, and like Clint has warned her and prepped her as much as he could. Like, this is a very, you're going to experience pain. This is a lonely route. Like, but in there's a turn to this. Like, he's like, you can, like, I
mm-hmm.
believe in you doing it, versus before it was very much like, stand
Right,
by, kid, like
right.
off to the side.
Well,
So,
say
yeah.
I like to again admit that one of my theories were wrong. Okay, I thought if anything we were gonna get a few more widows, but in actuality we got a whole lot of the tracksuit mafia. Now, when it comes down to that, I honestly throughout this whole series maybe thought it was a group of 10 to 15 people, because that's all they showed in the whole series. But in actuality, it's like a mob of them, like a whole, like I wouldn't have thought, like, say
Yeah.
when they all started swarming. Okay, I'm fast forwarding. Okay, we're at the party. Okay, we got some undercover LARPers here,
Yeah.
playing like, the, I don't want to say busboys, but they're servers, you know what I'm saying? And then Kazi gets an eye on Clint, and he starts sniping, and it starts to go down. Okay, and then from there, we start indoors, but oh, I don't want to even go outdoors yet, because then we do get some good stuff between Clint and the tracksuit mafia, and I think it was him and Kazi. They had a 1-to-1. Yeah, they were fighting each other while Kate Bishop was fighting
Yes. Yeah.
Yelena. You know what? You go ahead and die. Merry Christmas, Merry birthday, Merry everything. You know what? Go ahead.
I'm like turning red. I'm like, this thing is so awesome. Once Kazi starts like shooting at like this gala that they're in, that's obviously when everything kind of starts turning. Right, this is where the
Mm-hmm.
fights start breaking out, and I just love this scene because it's like not only is it Kate and Clint, obviously, fighting their respective like people that they're fighting with, but it's like it's kind of like the moment that people get called to this
Mm-hmm.
to be great. You know what I mean? There's like a quote I think from like a president where it's just like, oh, some people are born great and some people have greatness thrusted upon them. And I feel like this is the scene for like the swordsmen, the larpers, like they all like are like,
Yep.
this is our time, guys. And it's comedic. I was gonna say almost, but no, it is
Definitely.
full on comedic, like how seriously the larpers take on their position and their in this entire episode. And I think later down in the episode, I think Clint, like, is almost sharing this moment with them, and they're like, we're gonna die.
Yep.
But this is just a great moment because we see a lot of great spots with the swordsman just kind of doing his thing, and obviously he's like on
Mm-hmm.
the side of good. And I love seeing this with Jack just because it's kind of the glimpse we saw of him in episode 4, right? Where like Kate was like, oh, maybe he's a good guy, and he is. He just was the one who kind of took the fall for everything. Um, And I'm kind of blanking a little bit, but I know because obviously Kazi is on like the opposite building to where the events of like
Hmm.
the gala are. But I believe Clint ends up being on that side of the building and kind of takes him out for a moment. So at least we don't have like a sniper like just shooting down everybody as they're going across,
Well,
right?
Clint was in the same building as the party, just on a different floor, and he ended up getting an angle to shoot up at Kazi, and from
There
there,
you go. There you
that's
go.
when
Yeah.
we kind of lead more so into the Kate and Yelena battle, and from here, they're well starts in the elevator, and of course they're gonna have the silly moments of Kate hitting every single button on there, and I was like, before she even did it, I was like, she should probably hit every single one of them to slow it down.
Yes. The funniest part though is that like she tried and then like Yelena just like swooped her away
Mm-hmm.
like stop it. Like it's almost like Yelena's like the mom and like then like Kate is like this just like
Yeah.
annoying child and she just keeps putting her into her like place. But then of course we get this amazing segment of just them going back to back and I feel like it just shows off not just obviously Yelena, we know her to be the
Mm-hmm.
badass that she is, but also shows to Kate's skills because she's definitely more of like the clumsy one. The way the shots are kind of taken out, like Elena's a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
precise in a way. But it's so cool to see that she's still like obviously taking her on enough that by the end, like they're both kind of like complimenting each other's skills. Like, oh my god, it was so cool when you did this flip, and it
Right,
was so cool
right.
when
They
you
were
did this.
complimenting each other.
Because
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
obviously
exactly.
friends.
Right.
Yeah,
It's like they
yeah.
don't want to fight each other, but it's a necessary like evil that they have to just to either A, protect Clint, or B, take out Clint, you know? And I feel like if anything, they need to have a moment later on down the timeline to where, you know, they're friends and they're hanging out. Like if it's a matter of the new Avengers, you know, it's just like them two just kind of hanging out and her showing her around in New York. But I do want to kind of fast forward because they make it from the building into the ice, and then this is where we get to see all of these trick arrows, which come out to be all like
Yes.
badass, you know, and we get like full on Hawkeye, you know. We see like Hawkeye, like he does like individual shot scenes like every once in a while throughout the movies and throughout the show, but it's like he releases the whole arsenal in the scene, which makes him even more like badass that he can do this in one single episode. In one thing, let's say if this went down in the span of a few minutes, we saw pretty much everything that Clint can come up with, and I'm sure he has more in his sleeve. Like, but at the end of the day, we got the most Clint Barton that we've seen as far as being Hawkeye in anything in the MCU.
Absolutely. And then something in those scenes, I think one of my favorite one was obviously when they shoot like the Pym arrow that shrinks. We saw the one that kind of like
Mm-hmm.
makes things bigger, and this time we see the one that shrinks, like the truck with like the
Yeah.
bros, if you will, the tracksuit mafia guys, and you know Kate asked like the very reasonable question of like, what do we do with them now? And he's like, oh, I guess this is a question
Right.
for Scott. But this confirms what we were talking about last time of like, how is he getting this technology? Is it
Right.
directly through Pym? And I kind of had, you know, it was talking about it might be through Scott, and that confirms that for sure. And so it's cool to see like these little like snippets of conversations to allude to like relationships that have been built, you know, in times
Yeah.
that we just don't see. Obviously, like our heroes kind
Yeah.
of interacting. But that was really
Okay,
cool.
so the episode ends with we do get some resolve between Clint and Yelena. At the end of the day, they're both brother and sister to Romanoff. You know, they're not.
Yes.
Neither of them are related by blood, but as far as their relationship goes, Yelena lost a sister, and so did Clint. They had like a sad moment, and she was surprised that he knew their secret whistle. You know, and I feel
Yeah.
like that was just something that kind of proved like if I were to share something with my brother, right, that nobody else would know, and then I somehow make a best friend that becomes another brother of mine, and I share that with them, it's like, oh, then you really were that close to my brother or my sister, and it's to the point to
Yes.
where okay, maybe what you have said is actual fact, and it's not like it's not something that somebody else said, you know.
Absolutely. And then obviously, like Yelena is just in the middle of the grieving process
Mm-hmm.
with everything. For her, like it's just like she missed out on so much time with Nat. And then she was so ready to just kind of start like this new, I think they call it like Sex in the City life with Nat after she, obviously like awakened all of the widows, and she never got that. And so there's, she sees that obviously like Clint and Nat were just as
Mm-hmm.
close as they were. He knew about her. He knew about their time when they were kids. And one, like I feel like it also displays like how much Nat loved Yelena for her to be able to share this
Mm-hmm.
with Clint. But there's obviously like a little bit of a, she's like, oh, you got so much time with her. Like I think that's something
Yeah.
that she says to Clint, and it's like it's so heartbreaking because for both of them, they're experiencing such a huge loss. But that was an interaction like I just couldn't wait to see, and I think it played out exactly how I imagined it, and like just
Yeah.
better.
And
Yeah.
just kind of going off of time here. We may have to wrap up Hawkeye real quick, but the last thing I want to bring up before we switch the topic is we do get confirmation of Clint's wife being a spy, and I have the cover here that you sent of the Mockingbird, and there was a reference. There was a Mockingbird reference. I've known them in Agents of Shield, and I thought that was just something that they were going to push off to the side. But as you sent to me, this is confirmation that she is a Mockingbird, correct?
Yes. So, she's Agent 19, Mockingbird, also known by Bobby Morse. And she shows up a lot in the comics more so as like a secondary character or like a guest star character. But she did have like a short-lived solo run and a run also with Hawkeye, and that's kind of the one of the covers I'm showing
Mm-hmm.
that you're showing right now. And we've talked a lot about like her potentially being an agent, and so it didn't click in terms of like, oh, she must be Mockingbird. So I was
Mm.
almost mad at myself when at the end of this episode, the kind of last remaining little loose
Mm-hmm.
string was the watch, right? And she turns over the watch and it's the shield like emblem and it says 19. I literally paused the show and just like ran laps in the
Mm.
apartment. Like, how did I not catch this? And I loved it so much. I thought that was so cool that they added that in because not only is she like, oh, she was an ex-agent, like she like has
Yeah.
like a presence in the comic runs. She has history with Clinton Barton. Like they're married in the comics, all of that. And so I thought that was so cool. And, obviously it has the number 19 to represent the number that she is
Yeah.
like assigned as an agent. So overall, that was such a huge, I think that was like my favorite, like not my favorite, but that was the biggest like reaction in terms of the episode
Okay.
6 for me.
So that is what we have from Hawkeye. I think, wait, the last final thing is we don't know if Kingpin is dead, okay?
Kingpin.
Like Grace has mentioned it before, if it's not seen on screen, it didn't happen. So we don't know. We heard a gunfight, a gunshot, and who knows? She may have missed. And here, theory, Daredevil stopped her from shooting Kingpin. Who knows? I'm just throwing stuff out there again for y'all's enjoyment. But we are going to move along.
Hold on. I'm so sorry. To add on to that, oh, there's just so much stuff, guys. I'm sorry. To add on to that, so yes, if you do not see the death, if you don't see a corpse, are they really dead? But along with that, so in that final scene, Kingpin is facing off with Maya. And the last thing that Kingpin says is something along the lines of like, "Hell, like, sometimes family just doesn't see eye to eye." And then the screen kind of goes off, and you don't see him, but you hear the gunshot, you hear him drop. In the comics, there's a scene that looks almost identical to what we just saw. And it's after Maya finds out that, very similar, that Kingpin was behind, her father's death. In the comics, he had pinned it on Daredevil. And so when she obviously finds out that it was him, they have a very similar, like, conflict, but he's not dead. He actually is like
Mm,
blinded. And so the fact that his last line was like, sometimes we just don't see eye to eye, I feel like is another nudge
look
that
at
we're
that.
definitely going to see him again. Like, how are you going to kill him
Not
off
after just a few
right when
minutes
he's
in the
barely,
Disney universe, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
You gotta keep him for Spider-Man and Daredevil, you know? So Yeah.
Exactly. We're gonna see him again. I'm so
All
convinced
right.
we will.
So
Yeah.
I'm bringing up an image. I haven't sent Grace this image yet, just because, again, I've been scrambling all day. It's the holidays. You see, she has her Christmas hat on. So, the holidays is stressful for everybody. So, here I have an image of Doctor Strange because we're going to go into the trailer of the Multiverse of Madness that premiered at the end of Spider-Man No Way Home. Shout out to everybody who stayed at the end of the theater. There were actually a couple people that just ended up leaving after the first one. I was like, come on, there's like a second one.
They
I
never
learned
learn.
after what,
They
Shang-Chi,
don't
because I missed the
learn.
second one of Shang-Chi. So now I'm just like, all right, I have to stay until the post end credits. You know what I'm saying? So not just the post end credits, but the
Oh, I
post.
stay until I stay until the lights are dark and like people like it's like very evident that it's like guys, you gotta get out of here. Like I wait till the very last
So,
minute.
in this trailer, we do almost kind of get a few parallels to What If, but it isn't exactly the same. Now, we already knew Wanda was going to be in it, and it may still be true, but for me, like I think initially what I thought is Wanda may be the villain of this, but who knows?
Yeah.
Because say here, I'm gonna bring up the image of the gentleman. It's Mordo, right? That's how you pronounce it. So he's
Mhm.
back. He has long hair now. He doesn't have like the little baby fro, but he has some braids here. And I'm glad that he's back in the mix because again, I mentioned it before, like we don't know what happened at the end of Doctor Strange. He just ends up walking off and I was just hoping that they didn't play that character to the left and that they brought him back. And seeing him in the trailer, I'm glad they did that.
Yeah. And something that I think Marvel does so well is that, if you see an Easter egg or if there's like a storyline that kind of is like, left at the end, I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is very similar where we see or we finish with the cocoon that all of us assumed like
Yeah.
Adam Warlock would be in. We don't always get like that gratification right away. Like we wait
Mm-hmm.
years for that. And I'm totally okay with it because I feel like it's one, it reassures you that if we see something right now that doesn't necessarily like
Mm-hmm.
follow through right away,
Yeah.
we're gonna see it down the road, and this is one of those examples. So Mordo's return was huge because obviously he left so ominously, like not just on like I'm out of here, but I'm going to get rid of
Right.
this establishment because I just no
Right.
longer believe in it.
But like say the way the trailer plays off, it's as if Strange is coming to Wanda for help as opposed to fending off Wanda. Because initially, the way you would think
Yeah.
after WandaVision ended, uh, she may go evil, and Doctor Strange is the only one that can pretty much stop her. But here, they're meeting
Mhm.
in somewhere, and she is almost kind of confessing her crimes to Westview, but he's just like, I'm not I'm not here for that. like I
Yeah.
actually need you. I need your help. And right here that raises the question because I don't have the picture, but there was a shot of Wong in trouble. And Wong
Mhm.
is almost like Strange's, let's say, quote unquote right hand man, but in actuality, it was established in No Way Home that Strange is his right hand man now that he is Sorcerer Supreme. So, being that we see Wong in trouble here, I'm just going to assume that because of that, Strange is now enlisting Wanda for help, as opposed to another sorcerer in the on Bleecker Street. I forgot the name of the Sanctum. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And no, absolutely. And I think a lot of us assumed that Wanda would be some form of like antagonist in this film, whether it's like in the beginning and then they team up somewhere in the middle. That's kind of what I thought would play out. So it's cool to kind of see that it's very different. He's coming to her for some expertise on the multiverse because that's, the question he asks her. And so it's exciting to see that we're gonna get an idea of what she's been researching from the dark hold since we've seen her
Mm-hmm.
last in WandaVision. And so that's really cool and it's exciting to kind of get an understanding. And for Doctor Strange to
Mm-hmm.
go to her for something for anything in terms of, because he's kind of looked to be like the grandeur, right? That's why Spider-Man went to go look for him and, for help when he was having this problem. So it's cool to see him going to Wanda. And I think it just sets up that whole idea of how
Mm-hmm.
powerful Wanda is. They say it in WandaVision, like you might even be more powerful than the
Mm-hmm.
Sorcerer Supreme. So that's really cool to see. Um, and I had another note. I know earlier you mentioned just kind of a couple of nods to some things we've seen in What If. So it was really cool because we saw what I think to be Shuma Gorath, which is the like tentacle monster that we saw in the What If, but it looks much
That's
smaller here. So I'm
That's what
kind
I'm
of
hearing. I'm
like
hearing that
skeptical.
it's not
Yeah.
necessarily him. Like the internet is saying that this being is too small to be Shumagarath. And just from what we saw
Yeah, yeah.
in What If, we those tentacles were huge in that, So if we were to get a Shuma, I would say maybe that's later on down the line, but I don't believe this to be that character.
Yeah, it looks very similar. And I know because we had seen Shuma Gorath appear a lot and What If, there was talks of like, oh, maybe he is like the main villain to this. Or maybe this is like kind of like those like a Starro where he appears in
Mm-hmm.
Suicide Squad 2. Like he was small and then he ends up
Yeah.
becoming bigger. By the time we see him at the end of the film, he's ginormous. So maybe that's like something that's gonna get played out because it does look similar in terms of
Yeah.
like characteristics. But I
I
guess
feel
we'll
like
find
you
out.
have you've
A
sent
very
me an image of Shuma, and it looks, yeah, like spot on to what we see in this trailer. But I just vaguely remember, like, when we were having a what if conversation, you sent me the comic book reference, and it looked pretty much just like I think I actually have the image. I'm gonna just, yeah, post it on up of
Yeah,
Shuma,
yeah.
this quote unquote Shuma throwing a bus towards Strange.
Yes. And so who knows? Like maybe we'll see. Maybe like we're gonna see him like take on his like huge size down and like down the route of the movie. But it that along with that, we also of course get the ending of this with like the dark Doctor Strange, and that's a very, very clear reference to what we see in What If with like the Dark Doctor Strange. I thought that was so like when that showed up at the end, like I freaked out. I'm like, oh my god, it's happening! Like maybe we're gonna see other things that we saw in like the What If storylines appear in this movie as well. Like Captain Carter, or So it's exciting because it opens the door for those
It does,
possibilities
but
now.
now like it also opens the book up to a lot of questions. Just because in what if we already knew Strange's mission, which was to save his girlfriend, and we got a few images of her in a wedding here that may just be a vision here in this movie. But now it's to the point to where what is this evil Strange going to like? What is his mission? Because if it's a matter of becoming stronger to change another quote unquote absolute point, I guess that leaves the question of what that point is. Because the Strange that we know in this sacred timeline, the girl didn't die. He only lost his hands. But now what brings this evil Strange here? And I think it's Mordo that we hear in the background saying the biggest threat in this universe is you. And by that, is it
As you.
the current MCU Strange or the evil Strange? So that kind of this trailer kind of ended with me like, who is Mordo fighting for? Is he fighting with Strange against evil Strange, or is he fighting our Strange to kind of prevent the multiverse from splitting? You get what I'm saying? Um,
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I almost feel, I was gonna say, I almost feel like Mordo is gonna be on the side of whatever like the antagonist of this film is. Like what I mean, obviously there's so many things that have been I think catalysts to the
Mm-hmm.
multiverse just breaking. I think the trailer starts off with like audio from No Way Home. So it kind of giving that idea that events from No Way Home have bled into what is happening here. And I know the last time we saw Mordo, there's a line where he's like, the what is it, the
Mm-hmm.
bill comes
Mm-hmm.
due always or something like that. So I think he's like seeing this as like a natural um punishment to what he thinks like the sorcerers have created, since they're not necessarily withholding like the timeline, right? Like they went back to, get the Infinity Stones. Done so much
Mm-hmm.
meddling with like reality that I think Mordo's kind of gonna be on like the side of like whatever doom comes upon you, like I'm
Yeah.
for it because you
Yeah.
deserve it. Um, and I was going to mention the dark Doctor Strange. Like, there's this comic book run that I think the What If storyline kind of drew on in creating this character, where it's like a what if storyline that's like, what if Doctor Strange was a disciple
Mm-hmm.
of Dormammu? And so, to your question of like, oh, I wonder what like the objective to this Doctor Strange is going to be, like maybe not directly Dormammu, but some other big bad. There's so many questions because I don't think it's going to follow the exact story
Mm-hmm.
we've seen in What If, just because I think that would be repetitive. But I think more so just alluding to like we are seeing a lot of different characters, and maybe other characters that are similar to what we've seen in What If
Mm-hmm.
are going to appear, you know?
So,
Yeah.
just for the sake of time, I just want to bring up something off topic from uh Doctor Strange movie, but it's totally on topic to the Multiverse of Madness, which I'm bringing up an image of Michael Keaton, okay? And in Far From no, not Far From Home, in Homecoming, he plays Vulture, correct? Okay.
Yes.
So, in that, he gets arrested and he goes to jail, right? Now, fast forward to today. We've seen so far two trailers of the movie Morbius. One that came out a few months back and one that just came out recently. And the one that came out a few months back, we get an image of Michael Keaton speaking to Morbius, like saying like, "What's up, Doc?" or something like that. So it was easy for us to assume that uh, Morbius was in this universe, being that Vulture was in this universe, you know? But the
Right.
way that No Way Home ended, I don't have my spoiler alert image here, but it came to the point to where Strange kind of closed these doors, and by closing these doors, I mean sending, let's say, sending Venom back to his respective universe, and this trailer of Morbius, there's a reference to something that happened in San Francisco, and that is where Venom is set. Venom is actually set in San
Mhm.
Francisco. So this trailer leads us to believe that Venom and Morbius are in the same universe, but they're not in the universe of Spider-Man and the Avengers in the current MCU. You know, that they're all, I get it, Sony properties and they're in their Sony universe, but now things are pretty much going everywhere, okay? This is where I don't want to say Marvel is losing me, but I feel like if it comes down to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I understand that they're going one way in a storyline, but they have to leave the door open, and by door I mean they have to leave the multiverse open by the end of that movie to introduce these characters into the universe of Spider-Man. Because as of right now, I think there is a rumor that they may reprise Andrew Garfield and have another Spider-Man movie
Oh,
with him. And if that's the case, okay, keep it in that. But I would love to see that interaction with the Tom Holland Spider-Man having to deal with Morbius, having to deal with Vulture, because Vulture has dealt with Tom Holland and not Andrew Garfield. So I know I've kind of said a lot. Kind of react and tell me your thoughts on what I just mentioned.
when it comes to like the multiverse, I feel like it's going to be left open to some degree. It's going to, because I think in the events of No Way Home, it's to left you to feel like, oh, okay, like the issue has been resolved, the doors have been closed. Tom Holland has sacrificed what he has to
Mm-hmm.
get us to this point. But the fact that we have this film coming out, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, is a clear like answer that that's not the case. Like we're still dealing with those ramifications. Yes, maybe we solved what the direct like consequence to that like spell was going to cause, which is bringing in all the other villains from different multiverses that
Right.
know Spider-Man. But there's still been like a wound to the multiverse and its fragility of it, because like he said in No Way Home, like we know very like frighteningly little about the
Right.
multiverse, you know. And so the doors are going to be open, like whether I mean, I think all of us want to see just more interactions with all of these characters that have almost been like forbidden to interact. um but I think that door is going to be open, and I'm excited to say that it will be. And just to that point, like I definitely think that Morbius and Venom are from the same universe. I think it's one of the trailers ends with him like comedically saying
Mm-hmm.
like I'm Venom, and then he's like, just kidding, it's your friendly doctor, you know. And so I think that's like confirmed by that, and also the mentions of like San Francisco, all of that. And so I would definitely say like Venom and Morbius are from the same universe. Like that just would make sense. And there's nothing to contradict that just yet. And we have seen also some things of like Oscorp Tower in Morbius, which would also, you know, say that it's not in the No Way
Mm-hmm.
Home
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man universe, right? That very clearly, like, it's a clear distinction.
Because
And so, but it also,
there are no Osborns in Tom Holland's universe as of right now. We don't know we don't
yes,
know a
and it,
Harry
yeah,
Osborn. We don't know a Norman Osborn. Not yet. Maybe down the line, but as of right now, as far as Oscorp is concerned, that is only in the original trilogy and the Amazing Spider-Man.
yes. And then exactly. And that was even further confirmed by what's his name? What is not Harry Osborn. What's the dad's name? Green Goblin? Well, Green
Norman
Goblin
Osborn.
and like yeah, Norman. There we go. I had the name and it slipped from my mind. But you know, Norman in No Way Home mentions like, oh, there's no Oscorp here. My, you know, I can't find my son. So yes, like 100%. Like it's there's like a clear distinction from that. So we know if there's a Spider-Man in that universe, like you know, it would make sense for it to
Mm-hmm.
be Andrew. And since it sounds like we're going to be getting more of that, and like the fans are demanding, I am fan, I demand this. Like I want to see more of Andrew's Spider-Man. Maybe that's like another gateway to kind of get all of that to happen. You know what I mean? Like more interaction there and bringing it into like the Tom Holland
But
universe as
see,
well.
with
But
that it's like I love everything that you mentioned. Now it's just I need further confirmation as to why uh Vulture, aka Michael Keaton, is
mhm,
in this respected universe. Be,
mhm. Oh, and yeah, I had a question with that. Is it confirmed that it is Vulture, or is he playing a different
but
character?
that is a good question. But why would Marvel sign off on that, you know, because initially
Hmm.
we already had him as Vulture, and that came out, I believe, in maybe 2016, 2017. And then Morbius, this trailer came out last year in 2020. So
Hmm.
why have Vulture, Michael Keaton Vulture here, and then have another Michael Keaton, let's say, variant in another universe? Why not? And especially him being in a jumpsuit again, in a white jumpsuit, because he was in a white jumpsuit at the end of
Right,
Homecoming.
right.
So why have him in a white jumpsuit and make him something else? You know. So that is why, like, it just
Yeah.
leaves that question open as to what is Michael Keaton doing? Is he Vulture? Like, I understand if he's playing another character, but I want to know now if the multiverse is out, the multiverse of madness, if it ends to where now they're coming through again, and now we're getting kind of like
Mhm.
two things, because I think multiverse of madness, it drops in May. It's coming soon, you know. So who
Yeah.
knows? A lot of questions I have. Unfortunately, I can't ask them all right now because we're running low on time. Uh, but the multiverse leads to a
No,
shit ton
but
of questions.
I love how we're
Yeah,
wrapping
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I do love how we're wrapping it up because you know it's a fun time. Like I feel like with the level of writing and consistency that we just know the MCU to be, this is kind of a loophole for them to be quote unquote messy, but in a way that makes sense and still fits with the standard we
Yeah.
expect from them. You know what I mean? And maybe with like that question of Michael Keaton, like I feel like that does ask that does like make you feel I just want
Yeah.
to say icky. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like either make him Vulture or why are you making us confused? But they also did this with I forget the actor's name, but we saw him in WandaVision, who plays Quicksilver in
X-Men
like
universe. Yeah.
the X-Men movies, you know, in the story. So we know that it's like that can occur, and maybe in this universe that he is with Morbius, he just isn't the Vulture. He doesn't
Gotcha.
turn into that. Maybe he's but it hasn't been confirmed. So I guess we'll find out. Like, is he Vulture? Is he not? I think if he's not, it's still like because we've kind of had that be a standard with Quicksilver, where it's like, okay, like
Mm-hmm.
obviously it's the same actor, it's not discrediting the idea that X-Men exist within this like world that they're creating, but now it's just like a different level of it. I think
Cool.
I'd be all right with it, but I get the like ugh, of it. You're like, either make him Vulture or what is he doing in
Yeah.
this movie?
So
Yeah.
I think that's everything. We were able to squeeze it. We just hit the hour mark. So boom. Yep. High five.
Boom.
And
And we'll probably expand on these things with you guys as we see more trailers and things develop. So but it's so cool like to see all of this finally coming and merging. Like it brings the question of like, what are we going to see in Multiverse of Madness? Like maybe more what if storylines coming in. We didn't even talk about America Chavez, who was basically confirmed. I mean, she was confirmed prior to be in this film, but maybe we're going to see the X-Men. So many questions. So many
so I
questions.
think I want to end on. I'm not going to say a good note because this has been a great episode, but an even better note. First, I would like to shout out to Jesse Pinkman. What's good? He says, "What's up? Hope you guys are doing good. Hope you're
Jesse.
doing good, guys. What's up?" But I also want to say, we have some good stuff coming, and by good stuff, Grace, this is gonna be news to you. We're almost at the 100 mark on YouTube, okay? And this was a goal that we needed to hit in order for us to get a custom URL. Like, so say we just need a few more subs and it's going to, like, we're going to have our custom YouTube. And then from there, I think in the new year, it's going to be official. We got that merch coming, and I was hoping to see Grace in some, like, she actually got an early gift, Merry birthday gift.
A little prototype.
And yeah, we are excited to bring that to you all. Is this I think I need to talk to Grace a little later. Maybe not today because it is Christmas Eve, but a little later as far as when our next episode is. But if this is the last episode of the year of 2021, then you all make sure to be on the lookout in 2022 for that merch. It is dropping in January. I have everything ready. I just finished kind of designing the website, so I'm excited to show y'all. It's actually going to be themed just like how we're themed right now, So everything is coming together. We're going to have our custom YouTube URL. And then if you all could, because we have a ton of new subscribers, okay? Not only follow us here on YouTube, but go ahead and follow us on Instagram. I know we have our personal Instagrams up, but if you go to Instagram and search the Comic Cinematic Universe, go ahead and hit that follow button. You're going to see not only just clips of the streams that we post, but we're going to be posting anything from the comic book references that Grace has to any other promos as far as when the next episodes are going to be out. I know I haven't been able to post a couple promos, especially for this one, because holidays are a bit crazy, but 2022 is going to be a bigger year than 2021, and I'm excited to share this with Grace and with everybody. So you all just be on the lookout.
Yes, big things are happening, guys. Thank you so much for supporting. Super excited. I will see all of you in the new
Ooh.
year. We'll be announcing that next episode very
All
soon.
right, you all have
Thanks,
a good one.
guys.
Enjoy your holidays. Happy holidays, and see y'all on the next one. Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas.